everybody, and welcome back to the Blossom Review. How are you? So today we're talking about MTV's Sounds of Winter, a very unique and unconventional romantic drama that you can find on Netflix. If you haven't watched the show yet, don't worry about it. Today our review is spoiler-free. So Sounds of Winter is a beautifully poetic character study that doesn't shy away from exploring the most contradictory aspects of human nature through a slow-paced and introspective narrative. Sounds of Winter examines the love life of 27-year-old Tsuchida Ayana, played by Sugisaki Hana, who we meet at a noisy laundrette in the middle of a wintry night. Drowning the noise of the washing machines is the music that she blasts into her ears, some rock tune by the Michelle Gun Elephant, that becomes the soundtrack to such a prosaic, such a fleeting moment. Ayana is a published novelist with an incredibly intense and curious inner life. She's always wondering about the meaning of our existence and feelings. She's particularly obsessed with romantic love, an emotion she simply can't or won't understand. She carries a little notepad with her at all times on which she writes her wandering thoughts and doubts. To the sound of Michelle, she reads and rereads, writes and rewrites her little notes as she waits for her laundry. Everything, absolutely everything, from sound editing to cinematography to performance, is delivered with such elegance, with such effectiveness in this first sequence, that the universe of Sounds of Winter is easily and quickly established and accepted. So we become part of Ayana's universe as it's quietly infiltrated by the kind Saiki Yukio, played by Narita Ryo, a hairdresser who sits across Ayana as he waits for his own laundry. As a huge fan of Michelle himself, he can't help but still glances in her direction, and soon they are listening to music together. This serendipitous encounter brings out Ayana's free-spirited personality to the surface, and by the time the sun goes up the following morning, Ayana and Yukio are an item. We then meet the eccentric Hayase Kotaro, played by Okayama Amane, Ayana's friend who also has a massive crush on her. And finally, we see Ayana with the mysterious Yamada Sen, played by Uchibori Taro, a fellow writer with whom Ayana feels completely comfortable. So, with Yamada, Ayana feels free to talk about her conflicting emotions, her needs, and her experiences. Yamada is almost the personification of her little notepad, with a catch. They are both very much attracted to each other, a yearning they refuse to give in to, but continue to foster despite both being in different relationships. By the end of the first episode of Sounds of Winter, you don't really know how to look at Ayana. Someone who threw herself into a relationship so earnestly, but who can't or won't be faithful to it. Her excuses are so flimsy that she doesn't really seem to believe in them herself. I can't fall in love. I don't fall in love because I fear the possibility of loss. I don't know what romantic love is, so I must figure it out. Sounds of Winter makes you feel awfully uncomfortable, especially in the first few episodes. But before long, Ayana blossoms into a fully fledged character in front of us, as we are invited to learn more about her previous love affairs and how she has changed over the past decade or so of her life. Sounds of Winter is a series with a strong, incisive undercurrent whose characterization is established through idiosyncrasies, symbolic events, and seemingly unimportant choices. This is not a show that will please the masses, nor does it ever intend to. It creates its own universe, one in which people speak slowly and philosophically, and no one is ever completely good or evil. It thrives in the complexities and contradictions of human desire and behavior, through a complicated protagonist whom we come to understand, but we are never encouraged to mindlessly condone. Instead, Sounds of Winter provokes us to question, to analyze, and to empathize with Ayana. Even though Ayana's behavior will surely seem questionable to most of us, she's actually looking for an answer to a question we all have. What is love? Her mind is so preoccupied with clearly defining such an elusive emotion that she fails to face and cherish the bonds that she does create here in reality. Throughout Sounds of Winter, we navigate Ayana's memories, her many affairs, friendships, and family dynamics. With every encounter, she desperately searches for answers, engaging in all sorts of conversations that examine how kaleidoscopic human nature truly is and how romance can take many shapes and sizes. After we see Ayana go home for New Year's just to find out that her mother has actually gone on a trip without telling her, or after we witness her pour her heart into a relationship that seemed perfect just for her to be dumped overnight and without a proper reason, we realize that Ayana has had her heart broken before. Not once, not twice, probably several times, and not just in the romantic sense. Every time Ayana thought she understood what love meant, the rug was pulled out from under her. As Sounds of Winter calmly shows us how Ayana's relationships, whether romantic or familial or platonic, have molded her into the person she is today, she becomes less of a target of criticism and more of an illustration of how messy and confused we all are. Ayana knows that the emptiness she feels when in a relationship actually comes from her own inability to sincerely open up to others and even to herself. She knows she's selfish and self-centered because she refuses to put herself in a position of vulnerability that might get her heart broken once more. Even when she finds a spark that could potentially offer her an answer, she's too afraid to foster it attentively, to face it wholeheartedly, and to get out of her mind and embrace reality in all its uncertainty, chaos, and spontaneity. It isn't so much that Ayana doesn't know what love is, it's just that she is afraid of getting hurt in the search for it, and she doesn't really know if she really wants or even needs what's on the other side of that quest. Then Ayana finds herself constantly tying and untying her own knotty bonds over and over and over again. Sounds of Winter notices the extraordinary in the ordinary, establishing its own peaceful rhythm through a balance of silly and philosophical conversations. This is a series that requires tolerance and a perceptive eye, since it isn't scared to just let its characters be, really. Just let them exist. It appreciates the silence, the introspection, and the mundane. It tells its story through small details, quiet gestures, and dialogues full of subtext. It's also important to mention that voiceover narration is used very carefully and effectively throughout without over-explaining anything, because in Sounds of Winter, everything happens in between the lines. The craftsmanship in Sounds of Winter is simply extraordinary. The color palettes, the compositions, the production design, everything was meticulously devised with a clear goal in mind. Bolstering its slow-paced narrative, the show is composed of a lot of long takes and static shots, which allow the performances to play out organically and give the series a bit of a theatrical flair. With so many medium and full shots, characters are invited to move around the compositions, and we are asked to identify their physical quirks and body language. The editing never calls attention to itself, adding to the overall simplicity that marks Ayana's routine. This story requires such nuance from its actors that it's fascinating to watch them bounce off one another to create such three-dimensional individuals and three-dimensional dynamics, really. Sugisaki Hana, Narita Ryo, and Okayama Amane in particular deliver some of their career best performances in Sounds of Winter with a perfect balance of eccentricity, subtlety, and tenderness. Thought-provoking and sensitive, Sounds of Winter transforms the messy relationships of its subject into a delicate, beautiful, and complex exploration of our quest for the meaning of love. Ayana's journey can be both utterly maddening and surprisingly genuine, making us feel both angry at and sorry for her. This is a show that asks for your patience, your attention, and your empathy. But if you decide to give them, you will surely be rewarded. If you're up for a raw, intimate, and sometimes painfully awkward character study, Sounds of Winter offers a remarkably artistic dive into the psyche of an unapologetically headstrong young woman. Sounds of Winter is available on Netflix. Quick reminder that our complete review of Sounds of Winter is now available on the Blossom Review, and over there we actually analyzed a couple of scenes from the show to try to understand the subtext behind those scenes. So if you want a sort of deeper dive into Sounds of Winter, make sure to stop by the Blossom Review. And over on Substack this week, we reviewed JTBC's The Practical Guide to Love. So I'll leave all the links in the description if you guys would like to give them a read. Guys, thank you so very much for being here. I really hope you like this video and you subscribe so I can see you here every week for a new review. Guys, take care of yourself and have a lovely day today. Thank you so very much. Big kiss. Bye bye.